Welcome to Spirit Journey Collective. I'm your host, Sarah Tai. Get ready for compelling conversations with guests of all walks of life who believe they have found their purpose. Together, we will uncover unique backstories, hearing the raw experiences that led them to the work they are doing today. Let's expand our minds together with the captivating stories and inspiration that awaits. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Spirit Journey Collective. I have a really special guest today. His name is John Slocum. He's a no limits guide, and he's here to share with us how to really unpeel the layers of who you were told to be to help you become who you are underneath all of that. And I can't wait to dive in and learn more. So thank you so much for being here today, John.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to a great discussion.
Me too, especially with all of the connectivities issues we had to get here. It's like, of course, it's going to meet at the right time, the right place. So I feel like this is like right where we're supposed to be, and I can't wait to see what comes of it. First of all, why don't you just tell our listeners a little bit about you, what you offer, and what you focus on?
Prior to the event, which I'll get to, the event in my life was a serious stroke that robbed me of my ability to take care of myself and take care of those that I cared about. But prior to that, I had everything that would be considered successful in this capitalist, materialistic society. And it was a source of pride. However, it was never a source of happiness. And the background that I had, the trauma, the childhood trauma, and all of those things that we think that we can plaster over, it was alive and very active. And it took a devastating event in my life for me to get back, peel back those layers and find out what true happiness is all about. And that's really what led me here today for us meeting face to face, to share this information, to show that we can have all of the markings and all of the signs of success from the outside, but that's something that can always be taken away in the blink of an eye, such as the stroke that I suffered that took over a decade to recover from, and with everyone giving up on me. So I'm here to share the ABCs, or the 1, 2, 3s of how to peel back the layers and find out who we truly are and understand the true quality, the true nature of love that will get us to where we need to be. So it's no accident. It's not a coincidence that we're talking today.
Not at all. I cannot wait to really dive into this conversation, because I already know we're going to have so many similar beliefs. And also, like, what more can you teach me? Because I'm on this journey as well. And I find it so interesting that many of the people I've spoken with just in my short term, of doing this podcast, and then let's say, of course, the other podcast interviews and things like that, it seems to be a common thread where people think that they reached everything they're supposed to. They checked the list. They connected all the dots. They did what they were supposed to do, but they weren't happy. They didn't feel fulfilled. And sometimes, like in your case, they have their world, shaken up around them to where they literally have to start from ground zero. Sometimes they don't have to, they don't make it to that point and they're able to shift without that. But there's definitely this underlying theme of when you're not living in alignment, you're not living authentically, the world or the universe rather, will come and shake things up for you and help reconnect you. And sometimes it can feel catastrophizing, like, why me? Why is this happening to me? When really it's happening for you. And it's just trying to help you come back home to yourself. But it's just a theme that I've seen. And I think it's so fascinating how we think we've made it. And then we realize we weren't even close. And then we have to start over. Yeah. So what is the background, if you don't mind sharing, like, where you came from and what led you to where you are now?
Here's what I consider the miraculous part of this entire journey. I did recover from the stroke. It took 10 years. I had the paralysis, the inability to speak for the first year or so, and also the loss of the short-term memory. And, to many people, that recovery would be miraculous in itself. However, there's a period in our lives, especially those first 5 to 7 years that we're born, where we assume our identity. And it really begins in the third trimester of birth, when the nervous system is turned on inside the child, even before it's born. So if the mother is undergoing stress, or if she's going through traumatic times or experience toxic stress, as I call it, she'll literally pass that on to the child. And in my case, this was literally passed on to me because unbeknownst to me, I was raised by a man that was not my father. And I called this man dad until I was almost 20 years old, not knowing that he was not my dad. But it explained the cruelty and the emotional abuse and the physical abuse that he put me through. Because during those days, everyone had a mom and a dad, and to be considered an out of wedlock child was like the worst embarrassment that a family could ever have. So in my mind, I was responsible, for the breakup of the family because eventually they did break up. But what it did, and because of the cruelty and the abuse that this man laid on me, and remember, I climbed the ladder and had all types of success, even recovered from a stroke. But during these first few years of life, if there's no love, if the nurturing is not there, if you don't feel safe, and that's the biggest part of it, then the nervous system will do what it has to do to make you feel, not feel, I should say, the pain of what you're going through. But if you're in that state, if you're in that chronic state, it will actually, it's like neuroplasticity. It is neuroplasticity. We practice that over and over again. I was afraid of this man. So imagine every day the alarm is being pulled and you go into this state of defense. The nervous system is doing its job. Because remember, how we feel is everything. It's everything. And our reality, everything is based on how we feel. So during these first few years, we're in the state, it's like we're in this hypnotic state, where we accept everything as truth. So my truth was, you're not good. Look at what you've caused. This is your problem. You'll never amount to anything. And then there was the physical abuse as well. So this alarm is being pulled every day, every day. So, later in life, that alarm is still going on, despite the successes that I have. Now here's the interesting part. Not only is this alarm going off, your brain wave, your brain cannot develop normally, and then your emotional development is actually tamped down as well. So this alarm is going off, and you're not developing mentally or emotionally as you should, and it stays there. You can't think your way out of this. You can do anything you want. You can have all of the success that you want, and I was good. Part of his treatment towards me was locking me away from the rest of the family. But it was in the family library, where there was encyclopedias and books, so I became an avid reader. That was the only activity that I had to do. I didn't have the conventional childhood as you would think a childhood should be, but I had these books. And I read and I read and I learned and learned and just became a natural researcher. The books were encyclopedias, but nevertheless, and I became a great student. I received the first B in my life when I got in high school, but nevertheless, this alarm is still going off. And I've accepted that everything that's been said to me and said about me as the truth, because your brain isn't developed at that time, and you really can't distinguish, what's good and what's bad. But the brain, the nervous system is still responding as if there's still an alarm going off. There's danger, even when you're out of the situation. So it's a lot to unpack to what I just said, but the nervous system is really doing its job. And we really don't have any control over that until we learn how. And I think that's what we'll share today. We can absolutely do something about that. And there's one thing that we all have, that the quality of the true nature of love will actually take us out of that condition where we feel as though we're under threat all the time because of neuroplasticity, even when we're not. And that's the power of love. And it's the only thing that we can do that pulls us right out of it. And let me share this, and I know you have a few questions. That there's a happiness institute today that will offer a master's degree in happiness for $17,000. We have the quality of love that can pull us out of this state. And we can use that same quality of neuroplasticity to get where we need to be if we're willing to surrender to this true nature of love, if we understand it. And it has to begin with us. We can't understand the true nature of it if we don't love ourselves. And I know that's difficult because for most of my life, I did not understand what true love was because I never had an example of what true love was in person.
Wow. Yeah, no, that is quite a backstory and very interesting about the nervous system too. I'm taking notes on my, just kind of looking at my own journey. And it's so funny because I've done a lot of internal work. So you're totally right. It has to start with you. You have to start the healing process. And that's like going inward and starts with like inner child work and really kind of reconnecting with yourself. To your point, loving yourself and really reminding yourself that you deserve to be loved and really talking to the little you in there, like, hey, you're safe.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And one of the things it's still a struggle for me, but I've come a long way is I used to hate confrontation. My body would physically get hijacked from me. I
Mm-hmm.
would shake. My voice would quiver. I couldn't think straight. It was like my brain just like went offline
Yes.
and I couldn't deal with it. And I felt stupid. I felt out of control, not like losing control like my temper, but just like I was out of control of my body.
Right.
And it was just so I just avoided conflict like the plague, which was really terrible because it put me in a really great position for people pleasing and
Sure.
you know
Sure.
doing what everyone else wants so that way I'm safe. But I wasn't safe because all of that turmoil was still happening in here because I was carrying everyone else's stuff. And so over time, once I finally realized that I needed to like unplug from all the things that were like not good for me and were really putting me in that flight or fight situation over and over, I unplugged and really started that healing process. And now I still get those physical symptoms because it takes time to really like, you
Sure
know,
does.
unpack it. But now I'm able to understand where it's coming from and I'm able to understand that, and even like kind of give myself grace. And, there's so many different ways that you could work with, changing your like neuroplasticity and nervous system. There's different ways to do it. And like one thing that had helped me was, I mean, there's been many, many modalities, but one thing that had helped me was self hypnosis. I did a really short, I mean, it was someone that was offering free hypnosis, practice for them. And I was like, I'll do it. And we talked about confrontation. And she said, okay, well, what's a different word that won't be as triggering for you? Like, let's talk about a different word. And I was like, oh, all right. And so what we came down to was calling it communication. The confrontation doesn't always have to come with conflict. And so it was this idea of, oh, okay, so if I rechange this idea and call it communication, because even when you're confronting someone, there's an element of communication. You want to connect and you want to share back and forth. I was able to, now when I get into that space of like my body starting to get hijacked and I'm getting scared and whatever else, I'll kind of take myself back to it's communication. We're just communicating. It doesn't have to be bigger than that. And if it
Right.
does get bigger than that, I have the ability to say, I'm going to leave this conversation now. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
trapped. I'm not stuck. I'm not scared. It's very freeing because now I'm coming back to myself in this sense of power. So just
Right.
that story you shared just brought me back to like, oh my God, that explained like that nervous reaction that I would have almost my entire life that is finally starting to subside.
You'll love this. And I'm happy that you mentioned self hypnosis. Self hypnosis in terms of the brain waves, we're literally in the theta state of mind, theta brain waves, and theta happens here between 4 and 8 cycles, or what we call oscillations a second. Okay, so you're really slowing yourself down so you can feel, because when we're at high theta, we're literally separated from our feelings, and like yourself, it's really not fight or flight for us when the body betrays us. We're in fight and flight. We're in two different modes at the same time, and in effect we get neutralized. So we're frozen, even though that's not where we want to be, because it's the nervous system doing its job. So in a state of theta, you're literally slowing your brain waves down so you can communicate with yourself. Because in the other way, in the high beta state, you're literally separated from your emotions. The nervous system is doing all of the work for you because it had to, because at the time when it was happening, there was nothing that could be done about the situation, you see. So that's the theta mode. And love actually brings us down to that mode. It's theta or alpha mode, and we call that in the zone. And this is the only place where we can make real changes when we're in the zone. When we're in that high beta state, the nervous system is doing its job for us. And you may heard a lot about the vagus nerve, but I had to go beyond the vagus. The vagus nerve is like the 10th cranial nerve. It touches every organ in our body. I call it the MVP, the most valuable player in the nervous system because of its reach. The other cranial nerves has to do with sight and sound and hearing, and it's all, I call it face related. But that theta state or the alpha state, which we get by love automatically, it allows us to raise above this as the observer when we see these or feel these things happening. And we let them play out. It's like watching the credits in a movie. We see the credits after the movie, but we're not getting into the emotional aspect of it, who wrote it or what were they doing. We just see it. We can get to the point, love will get us to the point where it's called synaptic pruning. And I'll share the process to do that, where we'll see those emotions. They'll be just like credits, but they'll have absolutely no power to put us in that fight or flight mode, or in what we call the dorsal vagal mode now, which is the furthest thing away from love, because we're literally betraying, we're fighting ourselves. That self-hypnosis is a good thing, but we can always snap back to the old person. Love is the only way to neutralize it. It doesn't kill it, it neutralizes it so that we can talk about it and not get back there and say, why is this happening again? So we practice it, and that's then what we're going to share today, how to get there permanently without snapping back. Like yourself, I used to have to talk. I avoided conflict like the plague, and I was the master of it. And eventually I just became a bully, right? I got bigger and stronger than most people. I was more intelligent simply because of being stuck in a room full of encyclopedias. But then it became physical, right? To stop it. That was my way. But it was just a defensive mechanism, so that no one can get to see that I was ashamed of who I was. I didn't love myself because that's what was given to me. And for most people, they're dealing with a hand that was given to them. And it's not who they are at all. We know that of all of the thoughts that you have, more than 90% never originated with yourself. All of the behaviors that you have, 90% never, they're not authentic, they're not original. And so our job is to decide. For me, I use love as my baseline. That's it, because I know it's not going to betray me. I practice that. I literally practice that every day, and the feelings of it and the sensations of it. And that's not going to betray me. But for the average person, the internal struggle is, the nervous system is still responding to something that wasn't loving, that wasn't nurturing, and it's still in this state of defense, right? So that's what we have to get in. And that theta mode, self-hypnosis is a good start. But love will keep it there if we practice. Once we practice it, and once we know how.
I really like that. And the nice thing about love, like I feel like, what is it? There's this quote that I hear that I love. It says, love is the answer. Now, what was the question?
That's right. That's right. I love that. I
And
absolutely
like,
love that.
that's amazing. Because the thing is, when you are in a place of love, there's no judgment. There's no competition. There's no, I'm better than you energy. It's just, you're just in this space of compassion, of understanding, of connection.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's really where, it all starts. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Sarah, that there are no laws needed, that there are no interpretations needed. I'll share this. I have a friend, that one's a Christian, the other is a Muslim, and they were talking about their books and the qualities of it, and the conflicts that's going on. And I asked a question about love. I said to the Muslim, I said, if I read your book, I'm leaving off almost half of the world that doesn't believe in that. And I said to the Christian, if I read your book, I'm going to leave off half of the world that doesn't believe in this. But what about love? What if you try love? Because it's not subject to your interpretations of what you're discussing right now. It brings us together. Your books are based on fear, and fear will never, ever bring us together. It only drives us apart. Love is light, and it increases in size. And we don't have to explain it. We love one another, we come together, and we accomplish great things. Because really what it is, to be loved, you have to create it. You have to become a creator. You have to say, this is the way I'm going to be. And there's no, and if you're not creating, you're reacting to what we've been taught. And it's no coincidence that creating and reacting shares the same letters. So we're either creators or reactors, An actor, you can hear the word actor, will be an actor in someone else's play, which is not us, and we'll always be fighting ourselves. Or we can create the person who we want to be, and we have the tools and the knowledge now to do that. If you're willing to have surrender to love as your baseline. And even if you're not willing to do that, you can make progress over where you're at just by understanding the principles of the nervous system, because that's what controls how we feel. And you'll hear me say it 1,000 times. How we feel is everything, right? How we
Yeah,
feel is our reality.
I love that. And that story too between the two different religions. I grew up Christian, but I no longer a Christian. It just my beliefs I've learned are just way too vast. I can't put it in a
Right.
box, you know?
Right. Exactly.
But
Exactly.
I love like the teachings of Jesus, and I really wish that more people would see what he was bringing to the table versus adding the fear and the other things to it, because he was all about love. He was all
And
about
compassion. Absolutely. It is all love.
compassion. And
Yes.
I'm like, where did he get misinterpreted?
Right. Right.
So
So yes, I'm with
yeah,
you. And some of those principles are really, the compassion and the love. And I love that. I consider him a great teacher, one of the greatest teachers. And
yeah.
there have been other men that have followed those footsteps. But that story, stands out amongst them all. But I'm not religious by any stretch of the imagination, because, look at the condition of the world, and then they've had the control for a long, long, long time. And that goes for politics, sports, whatever institutions you want to uh, put your hat on, hang your hat on. They've had control. And look at the condition that we're in. We've tried everything except love, because that has all been from the outside. Now, bring the love home, starting with self, and you'll see a transformation that cannot occur with anything from the outside, because this can never be taken away, ever.
So yeah, no, absolutely. I I feel like there is an element of waking up in the world. I do feel like more and more people are starting to see the chaos and also see that they can change themselves, which makes a difference in their world and then makes a difference in the world around them. So I do feel like there is a shift. I just hope it keeps shifting in the direction it's going. Love to ask you. So I know you shared that you went through a stroke and it took you 10 years to recover, and now you're here with teaching with all these beautiful teachings and information and everything else. How did you go from, like, what was that story like, going from being paralyzed, not being able to speak? You said that you felt like people were giving up on you, but then you had to find a way to not give up on yourself and then get to where you are now. How did you get there? Like, what does that part of the story look like?
As I said, I was separated from the rest of my family, and literally, I didn't have a childhood, and raised by a man, as I said, that wasn't my real dad. And in my mind, when I had this stroke, when I had this devastating stroke, all I could think of was, you got through that, which should have destroyed you. If you got through that, you can certainly get through this, which pales in comparison. So, sometimes we think that the misery and the bad things that are happening to us could never ever be used for good. But in my case, if I hadn't gone through this horrible experience, I'd have never been prepared to go through this horrible experience that I was going through. Because as I said, I've had the success and the trappings from the outer world, but it gave me a resilience and an inner strength to know that I could overcome anything. And once I submitted, as I surrendered to love itself, I begin to realize that only love is going to get us through this. Then I begin to heal. Now first, the feeling started coming back. Then the memory started coming back, and I learned about what I had to do to get the memory back. It's neuroplasticity, learning new things or doing things that you've never done before. So I started studying, and I decided to finish up on my information technology degree. I got that. I decided to learn Spanish and Chinese. I did very well with Spanish, Chinese not so well. And I decided to learn ride a motorcycle. And these things were just to create new neural pathways in the brain, neuroplasticity, to overwrite the things that were not serving me anymore. I needed new pathways so I can get my memory back. So it was, getting through that horrible experience, knowing that I can get through this, then surrendering to the quality of love. And it's not just a feeling, it's a healing as well. And it's a physical healing. So I had migraine headaches my entire life. I had stomach disorders my entire life. I had muscle tightness my entire life. I had the avoidance personality, as we said, avoiding conflicts, where I would literally tense up and sweat being around someone. And all of those things begin to disappear. And the almost 30 meds that I was taking begin to dwindle until one day I just put them all in the trash. So it was that experience from the past. It was traumatic. I mean, it separated me from who I was as an individual, blaming myself instead of understanding that it was a horrible situation. But that allowed me to get to the point to where I know I can get through this. And then from there, that's when love took over. And now I'm happy to say I don't take any meds. I don't even have a general practitioner doctor that I visit. My body is about as perfect as it can get. And I'll be celebrating my 70th birthday next year. So I haven't aged since the event.
You do not look 70. Wow.
And I have a 2-year-old child.
Wow. That's impressive. No, but that's amazing. It really goes to show that love is a choice. And not only that, but you chose mindfulness, right? Because in order to be able to make any of those changes, you had to be self-aware. You had to be present. And that's another piece of love that I don't know if everyone or many people even talk about, but another piece of love is presence. It's being in the moment. It's being able to stay where life is really happening, right? And so you were able to make a choice in the now to not like check out, basically. You could have checked out and you said, no, I'm not going to do that. And made these changes, and that led you to your recovery. So that's incredible. Right. And you really do not look 70.
Thanks. There's an anti-aging quality to love. And I learned the different organs that control that. Like we have the thymus gland, and that releases a human growth hormone. And they told us at one time it stops working, as we get in our teenage, older years. That wasn't true. They told us that we have a certain number of brain cells, and if we destroy those, we're not getting more anymore. That wasn't true. And there's a lot of things that we were taught that just isn't true. So, connecting this gland, with the pineal gland, there's an anti-aging effect to it. And when you're in that zone, as I said, when you're in this theta state or this alpha state of mind, the body is simply miraculous. We just have to let it work. So, I did read, the great minds out there, the Power of Now, the Dispenza, the Dr. Gabor Mate, Dr. Stephen Porges, with the polyvagal theory, Dr. Jill Bolt Taylor, with My Stroke of Genius. She was a neuroscientist who had a stroke, and she laid out the groundwork of what was necessary to recover from that. I've studied with the Dr. Lisa Rankins, who left the medical profession because she could see, in her mind, it was doing just as much harm as it was doing good. So, I've read these, the Dr. Redinger's, all of the thought leaders, and was able to put those best practices together and come up with what I call the blend method, the things that we can do to create an emotional baseline of love where we feel good about who we are, and then build on that and watch the body heal. And practice, love, practice smiling, that's critical, practice laughing and using the emotions that make us feel good. We literally practice the emotions using our imagination, which triggers the pituitary gland to release the chemicals that we need to feel that way. And remember, how we feel is everything. So once we know what the master switch is, and we flip it on with the smile or helping someone else, and sharing that light with others, my goodness, man, we're just set up for miracles, right? It just comes to us. We don't have to chase anymore. We become creators, and what we need will come to us.
It's time to take a short break from our wonderful speaker. Are you in the need of guidance around love, career, family, life, or purpose? Embark on a spiritual journey inward with an intuitive tarot reading. Depending on what you're needing and looking for, I offer private one-on-one sessions as well as personalized email readings. It doesn't matter what the question is. A reading with me provides connection with your higher self. offering curated personal messages, or what I like to refer to as spiritual roadmaps, guiding you to the future outcome you desire. Readings are insightful and affordable. If you'd like more information or to schedule a reading with me, please see the link below.
I love that so much. And I've experienced that a little bit as well, because I think it's about 4 years ago was when I started my spiritual journey. And because before that, because I just had such a not so great experience with Christianity. And then I, of course, after Christianity, I went to the other side of the spectrum and tried Wicca for a little while.
Right, right.
I had to go extreme, and that just felt like the extreme opposite of what I just came from. And I was like, okay. So anyways, it just didn't feel good. So I just kind of swore off religions and was agnostic, borderline atheist, like somewhere between that. I didn't want to be atheist because that was scary to me, but I didn't want to know what to believe. And so in 2020, I finally was like, what is it that I believe? I got to start believing in something. And that's kind of started my spiritual journey. It started me on my healing path. And then it also connected me with what my gifts are, which I've learned since then. I'm a tarot reader, but it's more of an intuitive spiritual channel that I do and I offer. And then once I started doing this professionally and working with several people, it was kind of like you're saying, like, it was like a light switch turned on. And whenever I'm doing this work, it's just feels so like, oh my gosh, I'm making a difference. I feel good. I feel like myself. I don't have to be anyone else. It was the easiest job I've ever done. It just feel like the more I do it, it just feels like me. I don't have to pretend, put on any masks, be anyone else. And not only that, but it's branched out into other areas of my life too. And I think that's been so healing for me too. Is like I got a hint of who I am underneath all the stuff. Sure. And so now it's like that's how I kind of navigate when I'm connected with my light, right? Is okay, so I know I am when I do this. And then when I feel like that, just on my day-to-day with my family, with out in the world, connecting with other people, that's like how I kind of know that, okay, I'm in my alignment and I'm feeling my light. And you know what I mean, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. And remember, if it separates us from others, it's not true love, right? We may be on the path, but if there's any degree of separation, it's not the true nature of love. But sometimes we have to go through that path to find it, because this is not a linear experience, right? Not at all. We go through our bumps along the way, and I'm still learning. I learned from you. I'm learning from you today. I love the spirit that you have, that you're putting forth, and that willingness that you have to embrace truth. Because under love, the umbrella, love encapsulates truth and encapsulates compassion, and then the compassion encapsulates joy as well. So, I mean, you can see that in other people, but anything that separates us from another person or another being, it's not the true nature of love. And if we have to explain it or justify it, we already know we're not on that path, right? We've been separated a little bit. So light begets light, right? Always. And that's the message that I think we should all be preaching. That's what's going to bring us all together. And you're right, we are at an inflection point in human history. We really are. I mean, they're trying to turn us into machines now. They're literally chipping us up now. You have a Neuralink, you have a company called Emotive. When that started a couple of years ago, there were only 2 companies doing this. Now there are over 10. We have nanotechnology now. I mean, we're using atomic level technology. They're saying that they can use it for medical benefits, but every invention that man has come up with, we've used it for our destruction. Look at the nuclear bomb, right? So we have these technologies upon us now. AI, that's proliferating everywhere, right? So to reclaim who we are, the true nature of who we are, I mean, what it means to be a human is actually being challenged. So if we don't embrace love, this may be our last real shot to have a true human experience. And I think it's vital and critical for all of us to come together and share that message.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like I said, I do feel that there's a big shift, like more and more people are talking about things like this when it wasn't really talked about 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I hear these podcasts of people who were sharing these messages back in like the 90s and the 80s. And I was like, you must have been looked at as really off the wall back then.
Out there, right? Out there.
Yeah, I mean, and how brave it must have been that they were doing that. So in what you're doing right now, do you really feel like that you found your purpose?
Oh, yes, yes. You know, being stuck in that room, everything had to be logical to me. It had to be proven. I was more of a science guy. And everything that I'm talking to you about now, I can literally prove it to you. I can show you how love settles the nervous system. I can actually show you how the brain waves, you'll be stuck in a high beta state if the nervous system is working against you. And when you heal, how the brain waves will come down. And all of the things that I'm talking about, I can prove it scientifically. So we're at an inflection point there as well. There's a merger of science and spirituality as well. And I don't think that's a coincidence either. But the main thing is that we absolutely know how to reclaim our identity. And that literally was stripped away from most of us. Most of us have no idea who we are, but we know who they want us to be.
Yeah, it's interesting. You compare bringing science and spirituality together, because it used to be super,
There's
separate.
one side or the other, right?
Yeah, separate. But the more I learn about, both sides, it's like, no, they're the two sides of the same coin. They're
Yes.
literally, they need each other. And more science is backing up more and more of that spiritual, energetic realm. And so they really are speaking the same language, just a little bit different verbiage, really. So what is it about what you do, though, that lights you up, that really that makes you know, like, okay, this is it. This is why I'm here.
Well, to see someone else, receive the information, but like we're all energy, right? And to understand the different levels of that. And when I was able to, for the first time to really feel the cellular energy that we have, you know, we have, they really can determine how many cells we decide. Some say we have 30 trillion cells in our body. Some say 100 trillion. But on one human cell, there are like 30 trillion atoms on that cell. And they all have memory. They all have life. They reproduce. And we have all of this life going on inside that one cell. And there are trillions of them. And we say trillion like nothing, but if you count from 1 to 1 trillion, it would take you over 32,000 years to count to 1 trillion without stopping, right? So, I lit up when I'm like, wow, we have all of this energy inside of us. We've never talked about it. And it all creates energy. We have all of this bioelectricity running through it. They're all alive. So we're connected to everything. We're not a drop in the ocean, or we're not a drop in the universe. We're the universe in one drop, because everything is connected. So that when I really was able to see that, and to see the big picture, of this energetic picture at the universal level, it's like, wow, we really got this wrong, right? And then there are other levels to that as well, but that was the beginning for me. So it's more about energy. Energy never dies. And once I lost that fear of death, it was a totally different experience living on this plane.
Yeah, that does make a really big difference. I used to have, back when I was still, borderline atheist agnostic, I was terrified of the idea of death.
Yes.
But really plugged into my spirituality, I know there's nothing to be afraid of. And so it doesn't freak me out as much anymore. And I love how you mentioned how we're the universe in one drop. I've also recently heard that we're stardust. We are literally stardust. And I was like, how cool is that? It's magical. But but when you look at energy and everything it can do that we can't see, but we know it's there, it is magical at that point. I mean, it's scientific, but science and magic, they're kind of, like I said, this two sides of the same coin.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. I mean, we're using now the electromagnetic field now, the energies that we can't see, to have this conversation, right? And it's something that would have been unheard of or unthinkable even 50 years ago.
Yeah. So from here, I would love to shift to what I like to call synchronicity story time. So this is really where, if you have any fun stories of synchronicity that you can't explain, it's like the universe, like, giving you breadcrumbs or giving you a sign. Do you have any stories like that you could share?
I have a few. And to begin on this journey, I was invited by a friend to join him in South America. And I joined him there, and I met the woman he was dating at the time. and she invited me to live on her property. And on this property, this woman had like birds and animals, things that I had never been exposed to, and mountains. And while I was there, she was talking to me about a bird that was pretty much on the edge of extinction, that her family members had worked towards, to kind of bring it back. But this bird was like afraid of humans, and rightfully so. We almost wiped them out. But one day, as I was sitting on the balcony, writing, I wrote my first book on that property. This bird literally flew up to the balcony where I was sitting and stayed there. And seconds later, his mate came out, and it's like they're like, welcome, and they flew away, and I never saw them again. And then shortly after that, my favorite bird is a hummingbird, right? I like the way they can fly forward, backwards, up and down, and that always fascinated me. And one flew into my apartment. Now these are very skittish birds. They're not hanging around people just to hang around. And it's like, wow, that's okay. And I was downtown in the center of the city, and one flew in front of me, and he's literally, I mean, I took pictures of these things, so I have proof of what I'm talking about because no one would believe me. And that was when I really woke up. But I visited family recently in the state of Florida. I flew back to the States. I'm in South America now. And I noticed this woman with a baby, this beautiful baby. The baby was sleeping profoundly in the woman's arm. As I walked by, the baby rose up, lifted his head and looked at me and smiled with this big smile and laid down and went back to sleep. I was with my nephew at the time. I said, bro, did you just see that? He said, Uncle, it's that energy you have, So, love, will attract these things. And there have been chance meetings I've had with people. I wanted to get my book published. I met a book publisher 2 days ago that's willing to work with me and not charge me anything, where I was getting quotes of $5,000, $10,000. I just meant this. I'm talking 2 days ago. So, I mean, there's been so many things like that that's happened. As I said, once you become that creator and understand the true nature of love, you really don't have to chase anything. It really is a law of attraction at work, but not in the way that that's been monetized. I mean, this is true magnetic energy. You put it out there, it comes back. You put it out, and love will never disappoint you. So I have so many of those stories. It's like, wow, it's like, just thinking about it just makes you feel well with appreciation and love.
That's so cool. And it's true. So I've definitely like dabbled with the whole law of attraction thing, but I've noticed that when things tend to just magically happen, it's never when you expect it.
Right. Right.
It's when you it's when you surrender. It's ultimately when you surrender and say, this is what I want. This is, but I'm not going to chase it. I'll take actions because obviously you need to do something, but I'm not going to but you don't want to try and put expectation on it because then you're limited how it can come to you.
I love that you said that. You don't put any expectations out on it. You just put it out. It's not even a goal. It's more like a system, that you put in place, because you do have to put in the work or lay the groundwork. But at that point, you don't have to chase it. To write, I had to learn about these different thought leaders and what they did and how they work and how their work impacted others. And I learned all of that. So that was laying the groundwork. And after that, it's like, put it out there and let's see what happens. And it's just happening beautifully. I'm talking to you, for goodness sake.
Right.
Right.
There we have a synchronicity connection with hummingbirds. I had on Christmas Day, I had 2 hummingbirds come into my apartment.
Really?
And it was after dusk. So I don't know, because normally they're sleeping wherever they're going by then, right? And it was with my ex-husband and my daughter, who's a baby, and it was Christmas Day. And these 2 hummingbirds were like flying up against our sliding door window and just kind of kept tapping it. And there's 2 of them. And we both were like, what's going on? So he went out there to go kind of check on them, and they flew in. So then we're like, oh no. So we had to catch them. And because it was nighttime, my mom's a bird person, and she's like, you don't want to let them go at night because they don't know where they're going. Like usually they're nested down by now. Sure. So she suggested, we put them in a shoebox, kind of keep them in a quiet place, and then let them go in the morning. And the thing is with hummingbirds, they do, I mean, obviously at night they're okay, but they do need to feed a lot because of their energy. They need to eat a lot. And so it was one of those things, we let them out like first thing, break of dawn. And the first hummingbird went away, and the second hummingbird was laying down. It wasn't moving. And I thought, oh my gosh, it didn't make it through the night. And I was just like, oh no. And then it was, I don't know if it was sleeping, because birds don't normally lay down when they're sleeping, you know what I mean? But all of a sudden it popped up and it flew up and then it disappeared. And I have video of this and everything. It was
Right,
just
right.
a cool story. Like, wow, we were gifted this chance to hang out with hummingbirds for the night, you know? And I don't know what it means, but it was just a cool experience.
No, for me, it's a good sign, especially when I was downtown. And this guy's he's just leading the way. And I just took my camera out like you did. And I had to film this, because no one would ever understand that or believe that. But those stories are there, and those are the signs that let us know we're on the right path.
Yeah.
And we just have to keep it up and sharing with others, helping with others without expecting anything from them. My blessings come from the universe and Almighty God Himself. I believe in the Creator, not in the religious sense of it, but I do
Yeah.
believe in
In the source.
you get what I'm saying. You get
Divine, whatever it
that's
is.
right. That's right. You call it whatever you want, but
Yes. So my final question for you, and I ask everyone this, do you believe we all have a purpose and a mission here?
oh yes, and I believe we're challenged to find it, because at those first few years of life, for the nervous system to be operating like as it is, it's already protecting us. But whatever circumstances we're born in, I don't think that's totally accidental. Some of us may have selected that path, but our job is to get through that, peel back all of the layers. You were told to do this, you were told to be that, you were told we have to live this way or live that way. And I think it's our job to get through all of those layers and find out the true identity, because we're just pure, beautiful, powerful energy underneath it all. And it's a challenge. It's like it's just not given to us. And understand, some of the expressions that said, if you don't find it, or if you don't use it, it will be taken away from you and used by this system itself, right? So we all have a purpose. We all have a story that's going to benefit someone else, whether here now or to come behind us through our writings. Like I write a book, I'm writing books now, and it will benefit someone. But I know I'm helping people now because I'm getting people that call me and write me and say, thank you for sharing what you know, but also for those that's coming as well. So everyone has a purpose, and their story is going to align with someone on that path. And I think we all have a purpose, a obligation, if you will, to share that, to help others along the way.
Absolutely. When we find ourselves, we find what lights us up, and through that, we're able to give back to the world, however that is. And it's like when you're able to light your torch, now you're lighting it for those that don't have their torches lit yet.
And they don't have to go through catastrophic experiences like I did, or not knowing yourself. We're making it a little easier. We're paving the road, so they don't stumble in the holes or in the potholes that we did, or that I did specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're able to take what we learned and pass it on to make it a little bit easier for their track and their journey.
Yes, but they still have to find out why they're here, right? It's like the two greatest days in a man's life is the day he was born and the day he discovers why.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome.
Okay.
So this has been such a wonderful conversation. I really, really enjoyed it. So from here, how can our listeners find you if they want to work with you or learn more?
Well, we have that Real No Limits Guru website. It'll be rebranded pretty soon to Real No Limits Wellness, but realnolimitsguru.com. I'll actually, I think I'm going to put up like a little cheat sheet. I call it a biohack, because I think we all need to reset ourselves. We understand how, through neuroplasticity, bioplasticity, and all of these things. And we know the power of love. I'll put down things that we can do, a free cheat sheet of things that you can do now. And it doesn't cost anything. And I'm not asking for any donations or anything like that. Something that individuals can use right now, to finally get in touch with their feelings. Because again, how we feel is everything. And we've literally been cut off from how we feel.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I will be sure to put all this in the show notes. So whenever this launches, I'll make sure to have the right, the correct link for you so they can find you. And
Okay.
it's been such a great conversation. Like, I'm just yeah, I loved every minute of it. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me today.
I appreciate you. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for joining me on another inspiring episode. Remember, your purpose is a unique and unfolding path. I hope these conversations have ignited a spark within you. Until next time, keep exploring, growing, and embracing the beautiful adventure of connecting with your purpose. Stay tuned for more meaningful conversations. If you're wanting more, consider joining our free Facebook community called Spirit Journey Collective, your haven for spiritual exploration and personal growth. Dive into a supportive community where sharing spiritual experiences is encouraged. Unlock the power of intuition, embark on a journey of self-discovery, and connect with like-minded souls. If this sounds like a community you'd love to plug into, the link is in the show notes below. If you enjoyed the episode today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for joining me on this journey.